My pleasure to welcome Ei Arakawa to our grad seminar. We're pretty much somewhat declare a performance artist. He uses situations, things, locations. So the way his name is like itself. Please welcome Ei Arakawa.
Hello. Hi. Hello, everybody. So, hello, ArtCenter. And thank you. I'm very honored to be here. ArtCenter is a community with a context and history, and I am very excited. I'm not lying to present this lecture here. My practice is performance, and often involves collaboration with various people, artists, artworks, and non-artists. How do I work collectively? What is the difference between actual collective and representation of a collective? I will cover some of these issues tonight with you. And I titled this lecture, I thought the titling would be interesting, Performing Around the Room Tones. The term room tone, it's in a media context. It means the sound of empty room or a room in which all the actors are standing silently. So if we be quiet for a moment now, we identify the room tone of this space. So the audio professional, room tone means the subtle, low volume sounds present in every room. Importantly, room tones are not all the same. Every room has its own unique sound. So metaphorically, I start from looking for this room tone within a room, within a museum, within a community, or even within a city. My definition of room tone is a kind of social psychological tone or mood, sometimes obvious, sometimes underneath. Room tone is a key that helps me to relate with each situation, and often it's the key to finding a collective crisis that I work with people. By listening to this room tone, I unfold myself to a group. I try not to instrumentalize others by understanding what other participants' interests are. So during that negotiation, temporal grouping happens. I just published the first catalog in 18 years, which some of you read a few texts from this book I sent to a crumb. So I see my work as a form of movement from one group to another, forming a constellation of different communities. It's a dance movement with no fixed center. So I will present my practice as a meta-constellation in this talk. Going through various projects over years, I respond to each room tone harmoniously or discordantly. So my talk is actually 90 minutes. Is that okay? So it's a section. And I show eight mini video clips, which is 12 minutes. So I speak like 70 or 80 minutes. So hopefully I can finish. And because performance, I often have to show a video. So and then time to time, few slides in what you see. I'm not gonna explain at the moment. So if you're wondering what they are, you can always ask me later. And for those who have this paper, I also incorporated, some performative aspect of my work into this talk. So I am adding voice performance of 2-alphabet monogram, which I developed with another artist, Nicholas Gambarov, a few years ago, while watching video piece here. to have some live element. And then also, I brought bamboo paintings. I can pass this around to experiments, sort of reducing kind of hierarchy between talker and audience. So I wanna pass these paintings to you guys, and whenever my talk is too slow, you can pass it. Or whenever my talk is too slow, or whenever something exciting happening, you can pass around. Or if you find someone who are sleeping, you can, whack them like that. So it's like a kind of live feedback. Okay. That's great. So early works, encore as Esperanto, mediuming as reconstruction mood, and Riot the Bar. I'm going to start from showing videos, three pieces at the same time. There.
Every night we make money. Drink was higher than before. We made the advertisement. And then the information backside of advertisement, how much we made tonight. Auction of Riot the bar. I want to hand this bar to someone else. How much we start from? Oh my God! $5 over here. 500 diets?
35 years ago, a police raid on a gay bar in Greenwich Village provoked 3 nights of riots that are credited with galvanizing the modern gay rights movement. We can see this crowd. You can angry, we saw people lighting things, people trying to make Molotov cocktails.
Okay. Okay, I'm very nervous because there's a lot of artists I admire is in this room. Okay. Oh. Okay, encore as Esperanto. I came from Japan to the USA when I was 20. From 1998 to 2007, I was an international student in New York. One of the earliest schools I attended was this 19th century French academic style, 19th century style academy. I went there only because I could secure my US student visa for 500 quarter semester. This was before 9/11. Many foreign students did this. I think even Kusama Yayoi did something similar in the 60s. At the same time, I was studying the history of post-war Japanese art in relation to post-colonial studies at that time. He was, one of the artists was On Kawara, the conceptual minimalist artist. He was one of the Japanese artists who successfully entered the canon of modern art. Despite his conceptual work that used the fact of him living daily, his life is often mysterious. No interviews, no portrait after he moved to the USA. So among the Japanese art professionals, he was famous for strictly controlling which shows his work is shown. So he hated to be a part of art exhibition with Japanese context. So knowing his rejection of his past, I felt some kind of minor feelings, almost like a shame, and wondered why he wanted to get rid of himself so much. Desire to question his construction of universality, I wanted to know what happened, his erasure of post-war narrative. So I felt great joy to be a lot of detective. This is On Kawara's work while he was in Japan, called Black Soldier, more like reportage paintings in the 50s. On Kawara actually uses the utopian language, Esperanto, in his paintings. This is actually Esperanto. It's very subtle. He used Esperanto when he produced his painting in Japan, Korea, or other Asian countries. So, it's a 19th century failed utopian language from Poland. Esperanto was evidence in his painting. He's still in continuation with the post-war Japanese democratization and idealism. So he's a rare artist subject who formed his strong leftist identity during the 50s Japan, during the American occupation time. So he actually even participated Democrat Art Association, which promoted Esperanto in the 51 to 57. Then immigrated Mexico and New York, and then kept his national identity repressed, if only temporarily. So I got invited to a 3-person show at Green Naftali Gallery in New York in 2005 while I was a student. As an initiation of this project for this show, I first did a painting making on an airplane, trying to spell duty-free in between USA and Japan. So this was sort of an initiation of this project. Then we temporal grouping of international students, including myself, mainly women, Japanese, and one Venezuelan student. We contrasted our presence with the idealism of On Kawara's use of Esperanto. Performance was 9 hours, performance shift, sort of normal work hours, assemble line of making an imitation of On Kawara paintings, kind of modern time style, destroying them, and reconstructing other objects. This is the first time I referred other artists' painting in the performance, which connect to my collaboration with paintings we will talk about later. I was thinking about multiple paintings as constructed identities, constantly being created, denied, and reinvented. I collaborated to destabilize myself, collectively construct this self. Some sort of game, no rehearsal, we did no rehearsal, and possibility to fail or lose. We could have a fight, we could just not enjoying or quit. How to embrace the possibility of failure. The fate on cover painting says duty-free in Esperanto. This is our sort of school art from this academic school to get the visa. And playlist of popular music from Japan in the 50s, which function as a music throughout the performance. So I was interested in making a publication on site also to make a zine making on the same production timeline as performance. Publication, not the past documentation, but extension of liveness. Sort of archiving as an act. Surrounded by the gallery system and Western individualism, room tone of I am the artist, so singularity, I started to think the form of collaboration is something I can relate culturally and socially. I was aware of many influences and relationships that myself was informed by, so I didn't really consider originality as a central motivation as an artist. Feeling our group presence in a gallery context in Chelsea was my first statement as a collaborative artist. So quiet here. Okay. So, mid-Yumin as reconstruction mood. What kind of psychological space influenced my subjectivity? Here's another performance with the same group. This time we duplicate global pop concert architecture by Mark Fisher, a British production designer in the 90s who designed Madonna, Janet Jackson, Rolling Stones. This is Beijing Olympic, MTV, U2. This is Pink Floyd, concert from 1981. So as a global pop connection, I used the music of Yumi Matsutoya. Her nickname is Yumin, one of few J-pop singers who could afford working with Mark Fisher back then. Her feminized pop aspect was a social space I belonged as a closet gay teenager in Japan. Performance. Mark Fisher also designed several Super Bowl halftime shows around 2004. Our performance was modeled after this temporal construction in which 400 volunteers construct stage set during 4 minutes commercial break, and then reconstruct stage set during another commercial break during 4 minutes. So this very fast production of this spectacle stage set. So in 15 minutes, 8 of us perform over building, and 15 minutes, I'm building a space. So in between, nothing happened. While Yumi was playing over the speaker, the art generate the pressure of production to us. Countdown was projected, 30 minutes countdown. We are channeling the precarious mood of the behind the stage production. Computer graphics of the galleries, which is this. It's very elemental computer graphics. They kind of mock the wizardry construction of halftime show. I owe a lot with my collaborator, who was my roommate at that time. She was a mature carpenter, good at cheating on the construction, such as using duct tapes So she didn't care about art world that much, but we credited Ei Arakawa and Mari Mutai. This is the first time sort of credit my name with other people, resisting a pool of solo performance, so to say. So also our bad building performance spoke to the construction rush of the city. Many new buildings were under construction at Lower East Side, channeling of New York in the early 21st century, pre-2008 crash. Is this new world being constructed carefully or in a spectacular rush? Which room tone am I familiar with? Who is my audience? Who was the community for my early work? Around 2004, Lena Spolling's Fine Art, a gallery and fictional artist, audience who were bored by the business rhythm of Chelsea galleries, echoing, for instance, Cologne's more bohemian, critically bohemian art scene in the 90s, or Jack Smith, or Jack Smith who resisting commercialization in New York. New younger galleries emerging in Lower East Side, temporal artist space, Orchard, end of American Fine Arts, Passerby, Gavin Brown. By then, Saturday on Chelsea was really crowded, almost like a Disneyland. Relational aesthetics invading New York, kind of packaged sort of art movement. And very lively Dear Chelsea, where Stan did the show, also Diana Theater. I was volunteering there. And in Performer Biennale 2005, around then, performance become more institutionalized. And I often think about my New York City audience when I make a work, particularly this Lena Spolling's audience of the early 2000s. It's a mixture of artists, students, curators, and critics, very intergenerational. They were aware about history of New York performances and institutional critique. These audiences were my foundation, although eventually my practice expanded and traveled to other cities and had to readjust, reposition my idea of audience to be broader. Still, this audience is an important filter of my work process. Riot about 2005, this is the last work I did at the MFA. So, you students must know the feeling of being separated from the world while at the MFA. Am I right? I feel you. My MFA was located upstate New York, and I had a problem with the clean, new agey environment of New York upstate. Sort of room tone was, very kind of leaning towards that around my campus, and I wanted to add a disruptive tone within this art learning environment. At also same time, I also wanted to make a queer platform to learn queer history. After I arrived to the USA at the end of the 90s, when I visited West Side and Chelsea in New York, I was shocked how commercialized gay culture in US was. So young me expected so much to learn our history, especially 1999 was the 30 years anniversary of the Stonewall Riot, which was an important riot for the US and the international gay rights movement, which happened in '69. For instance, there was Stonewall Bistro nearby the original site of Stonewall Inn. I was very curious to know what the history of our kind of history. Then instead I got bistro. So my understanding of what's this commercialization of gay culture was, I think in order to fight with AIDS crisis, U.S. gay culture in the 90s formed tie with commerce and kind of produced a lot of positive body image, but it also promoted certain type of body image and racial profile. So I felt like a misfit and had a skepticism toward this international kind of influence. So the question, how to identify with the community and how to disidentify with the community, it was a very important question for me. So to learn more about this, my instinct to make a businesses, I created the DIY bar structure outside of my MFA building. Instead of giving away liquor and cocktail, I want to act as a capitalist entrepreneur to sell the liquor to other students. No staged generosity. Some complained, some joyful screams, some faculty with alcoholism. The name was called Riot, an ambiguous name for a business. Who's rioting? To further complicate this, I also installed advertisement signs for exhibitions consisting of artists from identity politics of the 1990s. Every time we made drinking profit, I made new signs and the bar was expanded. Profit growth. Riot the bar was an antisocial social structure. At the end of the cycle of this structure, the ownership of the structure was sold off to another student in one drunken night. Subsequently, we moved the structure collectively and dumped it on a nearby field. Value doesn't reside in material, but the gathering of the community, gathering of bodies, which actually echoes with Issei Grand Shrine in Japan, which is rebuilt every 20 years in a transfer ritual for 1300 years. I mean, I didn't really think of this at that time, but I just wanted to add some context. And currently, we have the West Shrine since 2013, and the people, Japanese people believe it represents material and economically peaceful time. And when they transfer to a right side of the shrine, it represents spiritual peaceful time. During one night, I invited Thomas Lanigan Schmidt, an artist who actually was at the Stonewall Riot in 1969. He's a sculptor who does show, at the PS1 and still very active. We asked him about the cause of the riot, which was the police harassment at the bar, which was the only place for queer people to do a slow dance at that time. If I stage this performance again, I will definitely go deeper with the experience of African American drag queens and gender non-conforming people. There's Nova, Jack Hormoner, Marsha P. Johnson. Riot the Bar was, to me, about learning by making, making my own program within a sort of given context, instead of passively working with the structure of school program. It's important to be conscious about the space outside of an institution, outside of an art world, outside of a museum, outside of group, or insiders. What is included and what is not included. Grand openings. Grand openings, Return of the Blocks, 2011. Earlier, I was talking about representation of collective and the collective itself. I was a part of collective grand openings from 2005 to 2011. And grand openings is both collective itself and its representation of group actions. Jutta Krute, painter, second from left. Stefan Cherepnin, composer, the left side. And middle, Emily Sandblatt, gallerist from Linus Paulings, and curator Jay Sanders. The name grand openings came from our aim to have many openings and beginnings, plural, multiple openings in a context, kind of rigid situation in which we are invited to perform. In 2009, the Department of Media at MoMA changed its name to the Department of Media and Performance. Sort of they are kind of adjusting to a new event culture. So the new chief curator asked us to perform. So we are like, what do they want? See, for instance, Marina Abramovic Iconics, the artist, is present in 2010, in which Marina just sits and stares at one audience, members gaze, audience members gaze, and at the center of this central platform space atrium, which, by the way, I hated and boycotted because, her cult of personalities. How can artists be present at MoMA? How do we work together? One, to divert attention, one singular artist to the group, decentralize. One, procrastinate responsibility or divide them. One, to deal with performance anxiety, to get energy from another generation of artists, to stay relevant in a network, to have a conversation by creating new work, to maximize performative potential, to produce a different kind of production output that can only be done as a group, to resist expectation by the museum. Grand openings usually had many casual meetings in the beginning and decide kind of approach by bringing different ideas by each members to the table. We responded to the self-consciousness of MoMA as MoMA, and MoMA as a big machine. MoMA. We responded to a MoMA's never-ending expansion. What to do with this hyper-public? Many general museum tourists. The audience almost like a mega supermarket. Awkward, transitory, difficult, and loud room tone. Is it possible to transport Lower East Side audience to MoMA, or do we really want that? The overall project was titled Grand Openings Return of the Blogs. A group of bloggers, which is art writers, we asked to participate, was sitting in the center of the museum. They document our daily activities in writings and posted them on the wall of the museum in a very analog way, like a community bulletin board, kind of in response to the kind of analog digital shift we experienced at time around, like iPhone came out 2007 and this performance was 2011. Not posting online, but posting in a physical space. It was a 2 weeks residency. This calendar was installed on the wall, kind of to-do list of various context-specific performances. We asked many famous MoMA curators to be involved with the daily activities, kind of showing internal to outside. They do extra works, outside of their department job. to find a peculiar way of inserting our program into museum. For instance, in MoMA, MAM at MoMA, inaugurating our event, inviting our MAM to do a speech, 3 MAMs. Magic mushroom, kind of, psychedelia, hallucination experience at MoMA. Direct collection tour, fictional artist Lee Williams. Extremely formal Wednesday, which echoes MoMA's social role in the 30s. Architecture show in the garden. There's a houses in the garden show in the MoMA in the 50s, which they built some different kind of houses from different locations. Showing back to to this stage Yayoi Kusama intervention in the 60s with art historian. Mailman performance, which MoMA has invisible internal circulation system, so we kind of highlighted where this international mailing system. We also invited young artists Enzo Camacho and Amy Lien, Sam Lewitt, Georgia Sagri. It was important to invite someone MoMA didn't invite at that time. Retreat and making a collection. Yuta wrote, performance experience as built up together to create psychic deposits. Ethics and instincts might help each other to evolve. Whatever you do, you also need to be part of the cleanup session, a kind of group therapeutic strategy, a collectively experienced autonomy.
Okay, everybody.
This is one of the events called Singles Night, which we use Yuta's paintings for the performance.
Move.
Singles Night. Many singles have dressed up or are coming straight from work. Bach on the electric keyboard. Mood, convivial, comic, fans waving, balloons swaying.
Oh. There. Hi. Us. Did. S. What's a bamboo painting? Maybe. Yes. Oops. S. Two. S. Oh. Grand Openings was a small unit where we transpose the community spirit, attitude of Lower East Side onto other contexts using our body presence, a performance of irrational administrative fantasy. Thinking about the agency of artists, we tested our MoMA as a space for artists. Artists are present. I keep coming back to this Grand Openings collaboration because of how it functions intersubjectively. One can be oneself while submitting to a group at the same time. It was loose, what is one's work and role, and what is group work. This type of intersubjective collaboration happens from time to time, and I don't want to miss the chance to write it. United Brothers, does this soup taste ambivalent? 2014 project with Fukushima Ocean. I grew up in Fukushima, Japan until 18 years old, and it was totally out of the blue to have an earthquake and nuclear disaster in 2011. I was in Tokyo on that day and was frantic to communicate with my family. after a few weeks, I needed to connect the reality of the art world in the USA and Europe and the reality of my family in my hometown. I felt responsible to activate a discourse about the nuclear disaster, which became a center of human and ecological crisis. I wanted to educate an audience outside Japan with the help of my family. My brother and I created United Brothers, a new artist collective around this time, as a way to reinvent a new approach to tackle with Fukushima issues. No, tackle with Fukushima issues. This is my brother, who is a failed businessman. I didn't expect it to. Fantasized about art world money flow, and I convinced him to also make a duplicate and facsimile of galleries, which showcased several of my friends from USA and Europe in Fukushima, Japan. We made only one sale. And 2014, Frieze Art Fair in London started Frieze Live, new kind of performance section. And for this, I made this performance called Does This Soup Taste Ambivalent? You have to think about art fair's room tone, especially the one of Frieze London, kind of art. London is the art capital. The fair is a space for dealers, and generally, the public goes there to buy art or, immerse themselves in a commercial aspect of the art world from head to toe, which can be very negative experience for artists. And in this performance, we flew our mother, who, with the dried radish and shiitake mushroom from Fukushima, Japan, and she created 300 servings of dashi-based soup daily using those things. And, we give away those soup. We tested with the NGO group in Fukushima whether these vegetables are safe to eat, if it's not exposed to a radiation. It was safe, it's not exposed. It didn't indicate the radiation exposure. But even though we display this in a space, of course, some people refuse to have that soup, never show up to the performance. But, at the same time, some people think more casually or, more decisively, they come and eat. So 300 soup disappeared in 2 hours every day. So this making a choice of having soup or not having a soup is the performance, not the soup itself. So this decision, this is my mother, just happily participating. This dilemma and media experience of Fukushima was what my family was experiencing at that time in Japan. So UK was famous for tabloids, and Frieze PR actually sensationalized this soup for the, before the performance happened. So actually, we got a lot of press coverage, which reached a lot of bigger audience. And sometimes, art transcends the art world, and this was one instance. And Japanese public reacted negatively. I think because, for instance, with the social media, they use very kind of sensational word, poison or like nuclear soup. So we are kind of backfired before the performance happens. So some people thought, the performance will damage the reputation of Fukushima further without knowing what it is, or some Western critics thought my performance was form of government propaganda to promote safety. But I think I was thinking about taste of ambiguity. So I wanted to manifest this ambivalence inside a very art fair situation. Second work, Fukushima Ocean Water Project. I heard about the news that Japanese government decision to release contaminated water into the ocean near my hometown in next year. I made a performance showcasing the actual ocean water from Fukushima. So during, this was last year, and then I asked my mother to ship ocean water. It takes 2 months to get here. And, I was thinking how to display the water's vulnerability. How does the water function as a collaborative performer or messenger? In Oslo, Norway, I improvised by setting up water saturation system about 650 feet. In this here, it was around the public sculpture by Danish painter Paul Kirkby. Water saturation comes near the Norway's ocean, Oslo's ocean, but it never sort of merged into ocean, sort of close by. And then in New York, this is the street architecture, which is sort of architectural expression of resisting the pandemics, resilient attitude of New York City, where I lived 21 years. I sort of added one more structure inside of artist space. And this structure also houses Fukushima water, kind of precarious water inside of a sculpture. So this water will become even more prominent next year when actually Japanese government starts to release the contaminated water into the ocean. So yes, I will continue Fukushima radiation as a non-human collaborator. Are you guys okay? Okay. 腹をふらおなめれアイナオハワイ。Good. Oh. 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 Yes. Yes. Just. Up. Kiwi. Who can represent a certain community? When I was invited by the Whitney Biennale, and the show was asking what it means to be an American, I wasn't American at the time until actually 3 years ago. But I wanted to relate with being American, maybe but with through more underrepresented group. So I joined New York-based Hura, Hawaiian dance company, which has existed since the 90s. I felt closeness to Hawaiian culture as a Pacific Islander, but the beginning of this project was actually a feeling of guilt. Japan has the largest hula practitioners outside of Hawaii. Because of that, my hometown resortized the idea of indigenous Hawaii. We have this hot spring theme park reproducing the Hollywood-style hula. Did I pronounce Hollywood correct? Hollywood?
Hollywood.
Hollywood. So it's a reduced version of hula, this Hollywood hula, which itself was actually imported to Japan from the US in post-World War II. I had a desire to show respect to this more authentic representation of the indigenous culture from Hawaii. Oh, there's a bamboo here too. So Hollywood and Christianity almost erased hula in the middle of 20th century. Like the history of contemporary art dance, hula has a genealogy of choreographers, very detailed sort of generations, and there has been a resurgence of Hawaiian culture since the later half of 20th century. Hula is a form of storytelling of the myth. They have many strict protocols to do hula properly. I wanted to learn the language, chant, and authentic form of pre-Christianity, indigenous Hawaiian culture, which we saw the video. Almost, felt like a responsibility to follow their protocols. For instance, they have a protocol of one of the protocol for the performance. In hula, before the performance, we always ask permission to enter the performance space. Ask permission from those who always existed in the past and from those who always will exist in the future. I like the idea of ancestry extending both directions, past and future as well. I think about history and the future of performance art, especially because performance art is always immediate medium of the present time. Starting then, I served as an organizer of hula performance in various museum contexts and contemporary artist exhibition. I performed with them for 4 years. Often we collaborated with the Suke Otonap, the painter, because mutual interest in the history and archive of dance. Sometimes we dance in front of Hilma Afklint, Kristin Brasch, Dust Institute. We carefully curated and informed the public about hula and its culture. This is the former Whitney Museum. So we had a few members who had native Hawaiian ancestries, but ultimately New York was too diasporic and dispersed for Hawaiian culture to form a solid center. The desire to support a more authentic community grew bigger, but only existed in Hawaii. We students were not skilled enough, not dedicated enough while we all had regular jobs. Eventually, actually, I felt like this 4-year project was sort of failure because we couldn't represent enough of Hawaii. I concluded this project when I participated in the Honolulu Biennial, sort of art transformed into a pedagogical experience. I managed to raise the funding by donating my own work to invite 6 undergrad Harvard students to visit, we organized a meeting for the students with local transgender Hawaiian activist, Hula practitioner, Kumuhina, aka Hinarei Moana Huaiton Wontaru. This is important community leader and poet in Honolulu, Imai Karahele. So as an artist, we are often invited into different parts of the world because art festival happens everywhere, literally. So sometimes art is totally a part of this resortization of remote places around the world. And as a performance artist, I should be even more sensitive to these room tones since we actually meet with the local audience in person. So if I do a next project in Hawaii 2000, maybe in next year, I want to search for a more local liaison person to collaborate. Project with Gutai. So up until here, I talked about performances that responded to room tones of various situations and duplicate social rituals such as assemble line of on-color painting, halftime show, gabers, soup lines. So here, I want to talk about my collaboration with paintings by other artists. My joy here is bringing paintings into the realm of the social world by doing a performance with the paintings. I want to make the paintings aware of its temporal condition. I want to activate the ephemerality of paintings. So what is Gutai? Can you explain, Laura? What is, somebody can, what is Gutai?
It's like an art collector from the 1950s, I believe, from Japan.
Yes.
Who often did non-traditional techniques in making their objects and pictures.
Great. So they use a lot of process-based sort of a creation of paintings, sort of a merging performance and painting making. So let's see. This is one of their first exhibition in 1954. Happened in south of Japan, near Kobe, inside of a park. Let's see a video first. This video a little bit longer. It's 3 minutes.
MoMA archivists talk about performances that are self-archiving or that knowingly address and challenge the museum as archive.
No.
Documentation was built into the original mud performance, which is re-documented here. Another archivist has a camera and documents the archivist painter posing with her finished reenactment.
Yeah.
Documentation is reenacted along with the re-performance, acted out by MoMA archivists who explain all this history while stomping around in the mud in the sculpture garden.
Jeff.
Oh, that's new, nothing common, things join
Which? What are you exhibiting at the next Gutai show?
How to paint.
So I don't think I can show anything. I'm completely lost. Long time ago, from this Gutai group, I was for sure I knew I was a painter.
That's true. bit. Yeah. One time I damaged the painting by Christopher Wu and Josh Smith while I was performing as a group. I dropped a piece of sheetrock and it scraped painting as it fell. The gallerist was in shock. Painters were cold. I don't know what to do. And I was shocked about this, state of paintings as a, high-priced commodity. This was 2007, and this, good things of this incident was, after this, I realized, I can kind of, work with paintings and, this culture of paintings, how I sort of perform with this culture of paintings. And yeah, some of the painting, like Amy Suman, I relate her paintings, have some very strong relationship with bodies. And also, at the same time, performance art around 2010, performance art became really overrated and hyped at that time. I think it's hyped because of its ephemerality or non-object status. So it was kind of makes sense for me to sort of look at more objecthood of, for instance, painting has different production timeline, whereas performance has more like very sort of short time. And I studied at the MFA building, MFA BAD, which was, very interdisciplinary, and painting this course was very in-depth. Painting can function as a model for ideas, certain attitudes, politics, and gestures. So I was kind of like almost like envious about paintings. So in this section, I want to examine Gutai as a perfect vehicle for my project. For me, Gutai functions as cultural currency, with which to address the issue of painting as body relationship, like I said, East-West, master and apprentice, collective dynamics. So while working with Gutai and other Japanese collective, I positioned myself as an artist who works with a collaborative approach. What did Gutai sacrifice to be a global artist collective? Their first exhibition was outdoor and open to children and non-art viewers. But after French dealer Michel Tapier came to Japan in 1958, Gutai eventually focused on more tableau making. I have a sentimental feeling for their decision not to do much performance anymore. Actually, this echoes to Onkawa's transition from Japanese context to minimalist context. How important where you come from? How important is national identity and making art in and out of your identity? Do non-Western artists have to assimilate and deposition in order to join the canon? Maybe that's the case for older generation. So I'm thinking about that. So around 2011, I was invited to the art festival in Toulouse, France. And I found out this was one of the destinations Gutai's paintings ended up, sold at the end of 50s. So I negotiated, and I had a rare opportunity to work with original historical paintings, working with the conservation department. So we asked to move painting at a very certain speed so that some of the cracks never, become like bigger. I wanted to bring them back into the realm of performance again, imagining what if those paintings dance or take action again. At MoMA, grand openings restaged Challenging Mad by Shiraga Kazuo, one of the Gutai members. We asked to, independent art historian Reiko Tomii to experience the actual performance rather than just reading about it, which is a model of my teaching as a performance artist as well. Performatively challenging archiving, embodiment, learning by doing. Also, it's a comment on the masculine gender of Shiraga's paintings. In 2015, I also created a musical scenario to talk about Gutai's members' group dynamics. I wanted to make a story to resist the public understanding of Gutai, kind of demystify Gutai as a unified entity. There were money problems, they bickered with each other, tension of being solo and being a group, whose painting sells more. So that became a sort of a musical for 1 hour musical, the lip sync. So yeah, those stories are also part of a reality of group activity. Last summer, Tate Modern asked me to join a team who developed a Gutai-themed performance. Because of the unpredictability of the COVID situation, we only had 4 months to prepare for this, which is very unusual for the Turbine Hall project. But performance people are often called in this kind of situation, like emergency. Because I do sometimes, make a performance in a very short amount of time, I identify the room tone, very weekends, social muscle. Is it okay to gather again? Kind of responded for this kind of tone, and we created an exhibition 4 months. This project lasted one month, well, actually 2 months maybe. Gutai was dedicated to pedagogy for a long time, less known to the West. They involved the children's poetry magazine Killing, in which Gutai members contributed art juxtaposed with his drawing on the cover. Some of the seminar work, such as Breaking Through paper performance by Saburo Murakami, came from the interaction of children, actually his own child. So starting point of Gutai activity was quite light-hearted and playful. So I wanted to embody this light-hearted kind of spirit at the Turbine Hall. We appropriated Jiro Yoshihara, Gutai's leader, Please Draw Freely from 1956. We let the children draw on the floor of Turbine Halls. I called it Mega Please Draw Freely to deflate the grandiose setting of kind of Tate exhibition hall. The ink we used is actually a very special chemical, non-toxic chemical that disappears over a few hours, kind of smudged by the steps of the public. very ephemeral take. We organize a smoke rings, which you saw in the video. It's also actual work by one of the Gutai members, Sadamasa Motonaga. I did a workshop with parents and baby strollers to make a circle paintings, kind of duplicate of a Gutai's painting. I never seen a strollers this much. This was the inauguration of Tate's 3 years project, in which curatorial and educational departments work together, which happens very rarely, but the museum around the world probably do more and more of this kind of public program. 2 departments have a different way of working with artists. For instance, educational department doesn't credit artists the way the curatorial department do rightly, whereas the curatorial department doesn't have enough experience on how to include children within the public. My impression was they still have to learn from each other. Also for the artist side, there's a stigma associated with the art education departments. Whenever artists work with art education, I was actually preparing this talk. I hesitated to mention these details. Am I not artistic enough? That's why I work with children. Kind of anxiety, I think, still kind of present. But I consider this as art about education experience, not education about art. So again, French dealer Tapier in 1959 dismissed Gutai's interest in child's mischief and playfulness as infantile, but we transformed Turbine Hall into a park where Gutai did its first performance in 1954 under the midsummer sun by channeling early Gutai, especially at this major museum. We embodied children as a part of the public. Okay, last section. How to make a community in an outpost. In this last section, I talked about how I use hand-dyed LED paintings, sound compositions, performance, and audience to make ensemble object. Hash citation, hash pastoral, hash monster. Okay, this is the 3 minutes video.
Now encountering you and this tech body, trunk truth, and the artist is felt and digital. We lighten up and squatting in the scene.
I come here, feel the utilities paid, no cost us in everyday more. Everyone listen and eat on their rounds, lift I'm an image of the just past before.
Video Information Center. We are 4 founding members. We always think about temporal situations whenever we're videotaping an event. We are more interested in the information than in artistic work. We hope our video information is able to be as broad as possible. We are very interested in broadening communication systems using video language. How
victories explosive. Without catch up to me. Sure, I cancel several commitments. Gonna die, can't predict where I'll be. Scared to catch you for if you want to push it out, cash is fine. Would you discard all your family? Would you discard your friends? Would you discard your one way
Okay. When I was invited by Sculpture Project Münster, once every 10 years decennial, I had to make an installation that lasted for 4 months. How can my work keep performing for 4 months? So usually there is a hierarchy between a live performance, documentation, and leftover artifacts. So I don't like this one-directional temporality. So I didn't want to make a performance at the opening of Sculpture Project and leave some documentation behind. I am thinking about some of my favorite paintings having this performing quality, also relate with bodies. I call it the attitude of a painting. It is a particular form of formal and conceptual energy. What if I make a genealogy or a makeshift community of these performative paintings I was influenced by? Kobe, Kother, Linus Paulins, Nicholas Kambarov, Amy Seaman, John Mitchell, Atsuko Tanaka from Gutai. I wanted to channel this attitude of paintings and imagine a voice for the paintings. Münster had a room tone of this boring, generic, middle-class, West German city vibe, except the presence of Sculpture Project.
Oh, thank you.
What if my favorite paintings hang out in the periphery of Münster city line, so anyone who wants to meet them ride a bicycle there? I found an off-center outpost for this personal gathering of paintings, almost painting is camping there, kind of making community. This is a performative citation, referring to actual paintings that existed somewhere else in the world, mostly private houses. Handmade LED paintings that can show a digital image. I added speakers that allowed the paintings to sync. Just like some media-based work, LED actually only lasted 6 months, 6 years, but they will definitely work for 4 months. Each LED actually is a kind of same size as the actual painting. So this diptych by John Mitchell actually has this size. So I wanted to sort of refer the actual size of paintings in a field. This was important. How to make a voice for paintings. I look at the painting. Sometimes I have performed with the original paintings before, so I have a personal relationship to it. I look at the objecthood and attitude of those paintings. It is a learning experience, almost channeling. It's almost like reading a scenario discovered inside the paintings. For instance, I researched the context of paintings, such as John Mitchell, who self-exiled to France, paints like riding a bike with no hands, the bicycle riding, sort of myth of living painting, subject-like painting, or Atsuko Tanaka leaving Gutai to work as a solo artist. she made a lot of paintings of kind of saturation system. So the work became a platform in which a composer, lyricist, and performance artist can work together to develop a song for LED paintings to sing. This is Mikhail Buta, some Cologne painters, which I was interested. I think of these LED paintings as a social agent, indicators, and messengers to sing about our society's reliance on images, from cave paintings to JPEG, Instagram, IMAX, or even NFT. For the use of image, I always have to negotiate with the painters. Sometimes I have a trust between painters and me. Sometimes the estate can be tricky because they don't want to give permission to reproduce the image, even in a bad quality. I think actually working with living painters are more open to this type of experiment. Maybe even they are interested in breaking out of their own institutional context and roles. So my LED works also become a non-human actor that can be sold and act as an object in the market that supports a sustainable way for us to perform. So kind of this is also about inventing our own sort of supporting system to fund the performance, which is neither theater nor a fee for gigs.
Feeling concerned, sunlight falling still. Wasn't something like eyes. To always wasn't something like eyes. He didn't reach me left
N
just accepted. He wasn't something like
F
he just received it. Speaking culture, sunlight falling still. He wasn't something like us. He internalized.
This is the piece called Performance People 2018. In Münster, it was LED paintings that performed based on the scenario of each paintings. A year later, I started to think, is there a way to talk about this attitude in historical performances? Is it possible to make a work that shows various performance attitudes? How to imagine historical performance in the present tense and alive instead of already dead, not as a past, not as art history. So I experimented with using astrology, with which I created character studies, reading of attitude, using the birth data of various works of performance art. This is Tony Conrad's 7360 Sukiyaki performance. I used the start time, like a premiere time of each performances by looking at the archive and working with the collaborator Sarah Chow. We analyzed the chart showing the position of sun, moon, and the rising sign to find the unique personality of each performance. This is 2020 exhibition in Düsseldorf, Fees and Nerve. During the pandemic, my brother and my mother went bankrupt, which was long overdue anyway. And I was at the same time thinking about productivity because art was called non-essential. I felt the inability and stagnation of the performance artist. So it was kind of depressing, kind of room tones, as you all kind of experience differently. So I made a coin animation that tells my performance wage per minute for some of the performances I did in the past, sort of a retrospective of my past performances with kind of economical filter. For example, Paris and Wizard, this piece I did at MoMA, which played 60 minutes times 3 days, and I had 120 hours of preparation, and the honorarium was 5,000 US dollar, which divided by minutes become 67 cents per minute. So this LED performed this 67 of money accounting. So yeah, what is the use value of performance art? There's a value that cannot be translated into the currency. So these are the examples of my past works that responded to the room tones of various contexts. And this is the end of my talk. And thank you so much. Okay, and now return to live performance. Yes. I'm going to do a new performance at Rena Spaulding's Los Angeles location, Get Back, Get Out. And the new show I'm working on at Overdoing and Co. So if you are, it would be nice to see you there. Okay, thank you. So now it's the time for Q&A. Okay, let me see.
I have a question.
Okay.
So how do you organize your performance pieces in time? Do you write a score, write a script? Do you give verbal instructions, or do you have people who are sort of agents who work with you?
Thank you for asking that question, because I do usually have a score. So it's basically, I think a lot of performance artists has their own way of making a scores. Sometimes draw on a paper. I actually use Google Doc to make some kind of timetable of a different kind of what's happening simultaneously, and then use that score kind of share with the performance. But actually, this score is only a structure to begin with. Often we actually try to have some sort of rapture to this kind of structure of also. Yeah. So it's like we do have we usually work with score with people, but I think often that will be kind of contradict itself within the performance sometimes. Yeah.
Someone once said that the difference between theater and performance is that in theater they rehearse.
Sorry, what did you say?
Someone said the difference between theater and performance is that in theater they rehearse.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Do you rehearse?
We depends on the performance. We actually, earlier performance we saw sometimes doing a lot of rehearsal makes less energetic, less momentum. So actually we have to be careful not to be rehearsed too much. Depends on the performance. Also, a lot of collaborator I work with is sometimes very professional artists or sometimes non-artists. So they don't have a lot of time to dedicate rehearsing. So for instance, the new performance I'm developing involving 20 performers, including myself, and Christina, who are here, also going to perform without rehearsal. So I think that's also kind of part of like excitement or energy, kind of sort of to generate momentum.
I have a question.
Sharia.
I love this moment where you talked about the construction of the self that was done through a collective effort.
Yes.
And it's something that I think is quite clear how the method is in your in all of your work. I was just wondering, like, if it ever created some conflict or confusions with like questions of authorship.
Yes. Let me see. Sometime, so usually, for the grand openings, we have the name grand openings. Sometime if I work with, okay, Norash, for instance, Nicholas Kambarov and I, Ei Arakawa, and, this kind of and. Sometimes we use with, Nora Schultz with Ei Arakawa because somehow I think you can tell, like, oh, maybe she might have more authorship to this kind of situation. So we are kind of sensitive about how to credit. Yeah, I wonder what's the other example. Like for the Fura community, we wanted to use the name of Harao, which is Fura group. I didn't want to stand out too much. Yeah, I think crediting is one of the things, being careful. Also, one of the laws when I make a performance, I also negotiate fee for every participant at the same time. Sometimes talking about fee in the beginning to make clear, what is involving, try to be like less ambiguous about everybody's time and interest. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's like a practical aspect of making performance. Yes.
But you're very flexible with like each project has a different way of like
yes
being credited, which is something I noticed.
Yes. Yes. I think. Any question from students?
I was curious if you could talk a little more about this idea of originality not being a primary goal. I was wondering if that was it's always been true for you. It sounds like it was part of your early work, and sorry.
I think it's a little bit of a contradictory in a way by, I don't know how to explain, but by, as an art student, I was trying to position myself in art discourse of, our discourse. And, I discovered this series of collaborative impulse actually coming from Japan from early 20s, 1920s to, mid-century and 90s and 2000, somehow we always have this impulse to make a group. And I wanted to sort of continue this impulse outside of Japan. I presented that as sort of like, maybe it's not about like being singularity, but more as a group. But I noticed also contradictory that is also like a very unique kind of context, like working as a collaboration. So maybe that's like, I don't know, maybe that somehow relates to you are.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you think of originality, or like the way that you're talking about it right now, is like the singular, like the production of like the singular subjectivity or of myself as a, like that. Anytime at work is sort of a group creation.
Yeah,
that sort of defies the.
I was interested, yeah, that in a way that, yeah, production of this collective subjectivity, yeah, that can be like very unique to itself, yeah.
So right, so is that the word you would use, like unique? Like what would be like the, I guess like the other term for like the thing that is created in like this collective situation that we would, it's not original, but it's like novel, I guess, novel or unique, or is that, I don't know. Just kidding.
Right. Also, maybe by the viewpoint of like Japanese art historian, maybe this activity might be very familiar, you know, resonate a lot with Japanese or, you know, non-Western art histories, and depends on where the historian stands, that might changes. And I like this kind of unstable kind of like positioning. Yeah. What do you think, Christina?
About the concept of originality in the work?
Yeah.
I mean, for me as a curator, if we're going to talk about doing an exhibition on your show, we would have to show the lineage of the origin point. Like, if you're the person that invited, in many ways, then you are the instigator, right? In reference to, I think, is what you're asking, like, the moment of expression in that specific time being a unique moment?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to know how he saw the originality that he was trying to defy or to not think about. So, and it sounds like that's kind of what it is.
Like, because it can't be reproduced because it's a time-based, performance being time-based. You can try to reproduce it, but you will always have a variation of the thing. So that becomes a very unique moment. Like when you're doing these, I mean, the thing that you were doing with the Gutai, is it a recreation or is it a collaboration? Because you would never be able to recreate.
The Gutai, yeah.
Yeah, because it's done now in the present. So there is a uniqueness.
But like immediacy comes to kind of replace.
I think isn't that the lovely thing about performance? Is that the temporality of it is, because it's always afterwards. Like we're watching the video, we were not there. We can't truly experience the thing. We're always seeing the artifact of the thing. I think that's what makes it so special. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's this like eternal question of like, you know, should performance ever be documented? You know, like what happens with, you know, when you just see the document. But I think this is a good emulation of it. So it's just like, it seems that it's just a seed and then the rest is conveyed through Ei's like talk.
Okay, yes.
Can you talk about the presentation as a performative opportunity and maybe how you've approached that over the years?
Over the years?
Is this your first time presenting at an institution like this?
Actually, not really, but I was like, I have like 2 years of like teaching experience, you know, not so much, and I started to have more opportunity like this, and yeah, just like sometime I started to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't really just show a video, at least, you know, add some kind of live elements, at least sort of show you a hint of like performativity that I do usually in a performance work. So, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I spend a lot of time to prepare this.
I was wondering if you could talk about the actual recordings of your performances, because they seem very heavily edited. And I was just wondering your process there.
Actually, I wanted to make, in order to show, for this talk particularly, I made actually 6 of the video is actually each 1 minute. I thought, shorter is more engaging for the audience because of, our that kind of attention span for this time. And usually, I don't really do that for my exhibition. Yeah, it's actually more, the documentation is more for archiving purpose for me or for other people to refer later. If I have to show documentation of performance in the exhibition, I would rather sort of kind of cheat sort of timeline of what's happened, sort of confusing sort of what's happened before and what's kind of mixing with edited material and then documentation material, so that it's not only like past material presented as something you missed already. So because there's some kind of hierarchy between event and sort of art, like recorded things. So I want to somehow mix up chronology. So when I started to do singing LED performance, that was one of the way to work with exhibition format, which I want to sort of try to do in a gallery in May also. Hey.
When you're talking about getting the room tone, what is your process for that? How do you...
Room tone?
Mm-hmm. How do you receive that?
If I try to get the room tone of ArtCenter MFA year 2022, I would start to talk with different people. Like, when I visit the studio, so how was it? Like, what's actually happening? Or I just sort of tell by talking with people or knowing, I don't know, talk with Stan, just like talk with people, and then somehow, sometimes what you guys would say will start in my mind, and that becomes sort of some kind of psychological weight in myself, and that could be developed as a room tone, which I can sort of respond it. Yeah. What is the room tone of ArtCenter now? Laura.
Transformative.
Transformative?
Yeah.
High pitch or low tone?
Yeah.
Or with some rhythm,
Actually, for the record, room tone, everybody hates room tone.
Yeah.
On the film set, when you're like, want to go.
Yeah.
Some guy goes, okay, quiet, stop, room tone for 2 minutes. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
That's everybody crazy.
I mean, how many years you are teaching here?
Pardon me?
How many years are you teaching?
10 years.
10 years, yeah. So 10 years, I think room tone changes a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was very different tone when I first got here.
So someone like this, it's very important to talk to in order to tell, yeah, what's the room tone now and before, yeah, where it's going, yeah.
I have a question about, you made a remark about Western art practice, which kind of led me to believe that you have a non-Western practice in your practice?
Sorry, what practice?
You often use paintings as a reference in your work, just kind of,
Yes.
kind of the quintessential Western artwork or type of artwork. But you also make references to non-Western practices.
Yeah.
I wonder if that is in the collaborative nature of these performances, where you see you take these things, typically the product of a solitary artist, and then have a procedure or process by which a collective action is taken on that.
Wait, sorry. I think first of all, I think the paintings. I think in the West, painting, the position of painting has very particular sort of part of a system. And then, of course, we have paintings in the East or, Japanese context as well, but not as like kind of modern sort of idea of like galleries and art world that comes like imported in the 20th century. But we had a painting very long time, of course, but it's just a different form of thing. So I just somehow, sometimes the Western painting system or, this individual painter's practice, especially in the beginning, it was very kind of foreign ideas. So that was like one thing that came up. But sorry, what was the end of your question?
Well, it was kind of that. I mean, you were talking about the strangeness of Western art practice coming from Japan.
Yeah.
I wonder if the main difference was the collective activity as opposed to the individual one. You kind of said that it was. So.
Yeah. I think in a different way as like a German sort of like apprentice and master, or European like apprentice master things. I think Japanese also has like very like power dynamics, almost like very like less individual sort of way of like making a craft, and like kind of nameless sort of craft school. Sorry, what I wanted, I don't know what I want to say, but yeah. Sorry, Laura.
I guess I have a general kind of comment that maybe you can just like riff on after I sort of say it.
Let me get the diet coke.
After seeing a lot of your work, I realize a lot of it, and especially in distinction to other performative practices, your work has the edges and boundaries and the collaborative nature and has like a light affect. It always has this sort of humor and
yes,
putting people at ease. And then when I think about the content, I also think about like that you're often trying to make transparent things about your situation that maybe would make people uncomfortable if seeing like, I mean, the back of a painting, or I mean that's not very uncomfortable, but it's like you're trying to like pull the veils up of the situation within which you find yourself, which is often, I mean, like starting with like an immigration / art school situation into MoMA, or, so you're stuff that's pretty like problematic, like there's problems there, you know what I mean? It's tension, and it's, I guess I'm interested in the kind of, and thinking about painting and why paintings, for a lot of people that is a symbol of art, and you found yourself in the art world. It's sort of like you found yourself in the art world, and so that's your materiality, your material you're using. Painting's there, so you're using painting, and I guess I'm just wondering, like, is this making of things obvious or transparent, maybe stuff we don't want to look at, or we're not able to look at, or we didn't have access to like a historical moment. Do you think about that, or do you think about just having fun with what's at hand, or?
Sorry, what do you?
I don't know.
What do you mean that we don't have access to a historical moment?
Well, when you recreate a historical experience, it's like
Like a Gutai.
like the Gutai, or like trying to bring us into a space of thinking about, maybe the real live person who made this thing, not just, I mean, I know it was a performance, but like even with the paintings and.
Okay, so I don't know how to start, but I think art history, for instance, like post-World War Japanese modern art history is only started become more sort of active after after early 2000, actually, like outside of Japan, like I think there's a lot of like MA like art historian, like young art historians started to choose more very specific like Japanese art historical subject in the like MA thesis in the art history department. That's only like happening like last 20 years actually. And I think somehow I noticed that, oh, actually history is being like building right now in terms of like non-Western history. So I somehow see this as an opportunity and also sort of a problem or almost like crisis. Oh, I have to kind of join this sort of momentum somehow without rehearsal, somehow create this momentum, as a performance artist to sort of respond or be part of like a living kind of historical moment. I think that's how I respond to your comment. Yeah, for instance, yeah. Does that somehow answers your question or comment?
Kind of. I guess I was just wondering if you start with the feeling of wanting to present something, maybe that's what it is, and then the sort of affect that happens around it.
Yeah.
It's just about putting people at ease, or about like not having control over the situation, or so that they can like really, you feel that kind of affect like allows for the audience to become closer to the collaborators, or in spirit, or because it just seems like you're trying to unearth and expose and talk about something problematic, but also maybe imply everyone in the room in that situation.
Yeah, to make yourself conscious.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know, or like if I can build on that, like maybe the question, like for example, when you're bringing the Lower East Side into MoMA, right?
Yes.
Clearly making a statement about class, right? Like intellect, interest, how people behave in different neighborhoods. So it's kind of a cheeky move, right? To bring the Lower East Side, which is into like Midtown, almost Upper East Side, right? Polite society. So it's like, how do you navigate that you're kind of not poking fun, but like, are you, you know, like what's the intention behind that? Is that to bring the real art into the museum, and in a way it's cheeky, you know, with the people sitting on the board and all the money around it? I don't know. How do you navigate that potential conflict of styles, or is that the goal, right? Because you do it in a very elegant way, you know, in a funny light way. You bring up these contrasts, I guess.
I think if I talk from my experience, when we are invited to a MoMA 2011, it was particular sort of curators that we already have some kind of relationship. Sabina Brettweiser, she came from Generali Foundation, you know, from very particular sort of institution to a MoMA, which I think she was kind of struggle with kind of, I don't know, some aspect of MoMA that a lot of big museum has this populist kind of sort of programming, and then somehow we had a relationship with this curator, and then somehow how we could somehow internally kind of expose itself from inside, and then assistant curator also participated that, and yeah, it's like, I don't know, there was some collaboration with certain people from the museum also. Okay, so this question is a little difficult, but am I sort of touching what do you guys are interested?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I guess just one quick question, or I guess two really. I was curious, like, if you think about working in English as a primary language, and if you, you know, with any of your dialogues, whether you're sharing in Berlin, think about different language. I was thinking about on Kawara, sort of use of English, and yeah, I was just curious how your thoughts around dialogue, and then I was also wondering how your mother and brother are doing.
Oh yes. First of all, my mother and brother are doing just fine. Thank you. Right. I think actually I wanna incorporate more of my bad English as part of my song making. I came to USA when I was 20, so you know my consciousness somehow already developed as that kind of Japanese language structure. I mean, I think as an English, of course, because you know I live here 21 years, but I have this kind of understanding of movement of two languages, and I want to incorporate more of this kind of embracing bad English as sort of a tool for my song making, for instance, which I will try to do more. And yeah, of course, sometimes I do a speech inside of my performance, and yeah, I think that has a different sort of I don't know, some kind of measuring effect of, you know, what I make people being conscious, like I make people self-conscious, but somehow the way I speak is very particular, so that, like, I don't know, somehow, yeah, I use it very, like, almost like a kind of objective way, yeah. So thank you for pointing that out, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I just want to say thank you for the presentation today. And I feel the way you're very intentional with how you do things and you're very meticulous. And I can really feel that with how you were, creating live audio and also presenting video. And that created this like space in my mind, this in-between of like the past and present that you were mentioning in different aspects of your work. So I found that really interesting, and I wanted to know, most of your work that we've seen is like installation, performative. Was there any other like art medium and like before stepping into that you were interested in, or what got you into art?
Wait, sorry, is there an other art medium that I'm?
Yeah, or like, was this like, did you step into this performative art first, or was there like, did you do something before that, or
Oh, I see,
your
okay.
experience going into art?
Actually, I was if I speak about my story, like I started to actually I wanted to learn design of stage lighting, like which you actually require the mathematics knowledge to do a stage lighting design. But so I went to School of Visual Arts in 2000, and then soon I met someone from Black Mountain College, which actually student of Joseph Albers, and he convinced me to draw fine arts. Somehow, I jumped into the opportunity. But before I go to fine arts, I did a lot of sort of kind of performative stuff as well. Yes. Yeah.
So that was more of like your natural language and way of going into, like, moving through the art world, basically.
Maybe.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
I think it's important to be a little bit unsettling, like unstable. It's not like, oh, I'm Marina Abramovic and I can, engage with energy with you. I wanted to be more a little bit unstable there somehow. That's my impression. Yeah. Yes.
I was wondering.
What is your name?
Oh, Daniel.
Okay. Oh, we're gonna.
Yeah, we're gonna meet.
Okay.
Yeah. I was gonna ask if you could talk a little more about this idea of kind of, I guess this idea of like the sort of destabilizing the self, and then sort of through performance, kind of in this communal manner, kind of reconstituting it or something. Like, I think Shayar was alluding to it, or saying that was something he saw and related to in what you were saying, and I did too, and I just would love to hear more about, like, is it the same self? Like, what are the differences between those selves, or is it like ego that's dissolved? Like, what's the thing that's dissolved, and what's the thing that is found, I guess, like in terms of your experience of yourself through this kind of work? If you can generalize, but maybe you can't. Or like, I guess just just your comment that you like were kind of, I think you said something about de-centering the self, and then, but somehow in this group activity, claiming some kind of a new identity or questioning the self. I just wanted, that sounded really interesting.
I don't know, this will be a sort of response, but I do a lot of collaboration, which I didn't show tonight, with like more like different artists. You know, Ei Arakawa and then blah blah blah, Ei Arakawa and some other artist, which I respect. And should I name it? But I think maybe even though I collaborate with different people, maybe my actual self is always same. It's just, you know, this is probability, you know. I stay always same, although, you know, I'm changing as a person, as like every time. But you know, somehow myself, my actual self doesn't always change, but my collaboration and credit somehow changes my artist subjectivity through the collaboration. This kind of sort of like, I don't know, yeah. This artist subjectivity and my actual self, it's kind of separated. And I'm interested through my performances, I'm more interested this like artist subjectivity is always kind of changing by working with different people. Kind of not randomly, you know, working with everyone, kind of promiscuous way, but more like, yeah, somehow I navigate more kind of careful way, but at the same time, you know, make my name almost like a foreign kind of name for me. But there's, of course, you know, my actual self somehow exists in and out of sort of my art practice. That's how I feel, I think, yeah. All right, thank you.